Mustafa, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Elena. It's a pleasure being with you today. Thank you.
I'm very excited to speak with you because you've had a very dynamic career and you wore a lot of hats. So I have to look at my notes because there's so many different things that you've done. So you had several lives as an entrepreneur, as a business coach, an aspiring author, a blogger, a diplomat, a banker, a pharmacist. And now you have this book, the Passion MBA, and this project that you're now working on. So there's so many questions I have around that, but welcome to the show. It's very exciting to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Same for me. And it's very interesting to, take ourselves through the journey of evolution, which I believe anyone can go through. Let's say in reincarnation, language, I lived several career lives in the past. I never had the plan to do so, but I started my first career as a pharmacist out of passion for chemistry. I never had the plan to work as a pharmacist, and I realized once I graduated that this is not for me. I didn't sign up for this. I needed to do another thing. After some time for reflection, working while trying to figure out what's the next step, I decided that maybe diplomacy is the thing for me. I'm originally from Egypt, so to become a diplomat in Egypt, it's a quite lengthy process. It would take you maybe a couple of years. Just in examinations, you just need to prepare yourself. It's a very long process of exams. I started preparing myself for this. It took me a long time, so 3.5 years while I was working as a pharmacist, going through different levels of exams. Luckily, I managed to do it, which wasn't easy at all. Being a diplomat, very, very interestingly, I started traveling, representing my country in, different places. I work in Africa and Malawi. I work in New York in the United Nations. I also work in China. After 10 years of diplomacy, while I was in China, I thought I reached the peak of my career. And I thought, like, okay, if I was able, luckily, to achieve, several achievements in my career, maybe I don't have the chance to replicate those, successes somewhere else as a diplomat. And I started thinking of my next step. I took a year of reflection, and the answer came through investment banking. So I moved to a multinational investment bank. It's called the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB. It's very similar in nature to the World Bank, but headquartered in China. Luckily enough, I worked there in the first year of operation. So for me, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Like working in the World Bank 75 years ago, was exactly the same. So I learned a lot about investment banking. I was in the investment department. I was in charge of business development. It was, again, another challenge because I'm changing. I'm a diplomat and I'm moving to investment banking. I had to capitalize on a lot of strength I had, and then I had to learn very fast to cope with the fast pace of work. Luckily, in 4 years of working on business development in the Middle East, Latin America, and Africa, I was lucky to learn a lot. That's one thing. Also, I was lucky to bring $1.1 billion dollar worth of investment and infrastructure to the Middle East, my country, Egypt. So it's something I was proud of. Around the same time, I was doing my MBA in Manchester University, which we happen to be, right? Alumni, and I thought I was doing my MBA to grow more in my new career as an investment banker, but how is the program as studying MBA is like you're knocking on different doors, exploring different possibilities, learning about different domains, and I found that there are more opportunities for me, and I thought, what if I want to be an entrepreneur or a venture capitalist or tech startup or whatever? And I had a new jump. I moved to coaching. So I started my coaching career in 2020. And I thought, because I changed my career a few times, and luckily it was successful in every time. So I thought there must be something I was doing maybe right in some of them, or even most of them. So I went back to the process. I recall every single step or action I did. I created a methodology. I I work on it for several months. I said maybe it worked for me, but it doesn't work on other people. So I started applying it on friends, family members, and seeing the value. It worked. And then I scaled that and went out and, started with paying clients. It worked. So what happened is the last 3 years, I've been in many different capacities helping hundreds of people. And this is what led me to my fifth life right now. So I thought if there is a way to scale that service, if you are able to help dozens or hundreds of people, there must be a way to scale that. Especially, I'm sure you have seen trends like the Great Resignation, quiet quitting. There are millions of people who need this service. And that's why right now I'm building my tech startup, which hopefully would help and address that problem on a bigger scale. Yeah,
that's amazing. And is that the time? So you have a couple of different. So you have the Passion MBA and then Time to Move On. I love that title, by the way. So what is the Time to Move On?
Exactly. That's the let's say that's the product of learning the hard way.
Okay. How
to bust all the myths that I've been through. Let's think of one myth. I call it the supreme specialist myth. So we mostly grew up learning that the only way to succeed in life and your career is to specialize in one specialization, spend all your life there, get promoted until the last day of your career. It happened that I believed in that for a long time, and when I needed to change, I thought that I'm wasting, a whole career back in the past, and I'm starting from scratch, and that wasn't the case. So I learned that. So I started busting a lot of this myth around. And while I was writing another book, it's called The Passion Project. I was helping people to know how to change, how to find their dream career. I thought maybe the first step is to step back and help those people to debunk the myth first, because it's kind of, you have those brakes and you just need to release those brakes so you can go full speed. And then it's very easy to ask how after that. So once you start debunking those myths, then it's easier for you to think how.
Yeah. I'm curious, what do you see as the biggest challenges that people face when they enter into that, okay, I want to make a change? What is the biggest things that you found? What are those obstacles they face?
I think the main obstacle in the beginning is that they don't have a clear vision of what they really want to do, and the challenge here, when I talk to a lot of people on a daily basis, they want to change. They maybe have a bit of ideas, I can try this, I can try that, but they don't have, I would say, a clear answer on what to do. And looking at this challenge, I figure out, I think the most important step in the beginning is orientation. If you don't do the right orientation in the beginning, you will stuck somewhere in the middle. You try a few things, you fail, you go back. Mostly the surroundings, the environment around you is not supportive. I have been through this, when I change every time, family members, friends, colleagues, everybody's like, no, it's risky to change, or you shouldn't do this or this or this. So unless you have done the orientation process properly, it's not really easy to figure out, what's the next step.
And what I would imagine is that sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. Like sometimes we just have no idea. It's like, I want to make a change, but exactly. There are some people that kind of know what they want to do, maybe a couple of things, but there are some people like that, I just have no idea. For example, like where do you start? Where does one start if they just have no idea?
Exactly. That's a big question. And also it depends on what age you are in, what kind of experiences you have. So I wouldn't expect a 16 years old student, he knows or she knows, all the answers for his or her life. And I was in that situation. So at some point in my life, when I was a kid, I wanted to be many things. I wanted to be, a football player. I wanted to be an astronaut, an engineer. And I say 5, 6 things to my parents. And then when they say, no, you have to stick to one, I figure out that I really have to stick to one. To make it easy for everybody at that stage is just to stick to what you really love to study. The answer for me at that time is like, wow, I love chemistry. Well, I don't see my future in chemistry, but I love chemistry. If I thought I would excel in something, studying, if I thought at some point maybe I might have a zone of genius, it was in chemistry. So I decided to make it easy for me. I don't have to plan for my whole life. Just study chemistry. I figured out that pharmacy has all types of chemistry. So that maybe would satisfy my passion to study all types of chemistry. And I decided to dedicate the next 5 to 7 years in my life to just study chemistry. And I would argue the same. You don't have to plan for all your life. Just study what you are enjoying at this stage. It's different. The answer for that is different when you have a bit of experience in your career. If you have a 5 years experience in your career, and mostly people at their mid-level career, they start questioning many things. Like, this is not what I signed up for. I'm not enjoying this anymore. I want to change. And then you face all those challenges of, fear of change, and people around you are questioning what you're doing. And here it comes to the orientation. And the orientation, I can give you a bit of idea what normally I'm doing with people. Let's imagine that maybe we're driving a car together somewhere from New York all the way to California, for example. Okay, it's a long journey. We need essential elements with us in the trip. Number one, we need enough gas for the journey. Number two, we need a GPS tracker with us. And number three, we need a final destination, an address that we put in the GPS. Without enough gas, we'll stop somewhere in the middle. We'll not be able to, continue the journey. And without the GPS, we will get lost dozens, hundreds of times in the middle. Maybe we will not be able actually to get to the end point. And the final address, if you don't have a final address, there is no benefit of having a GPS. Okay. Let's apply this on our life, our career. Enough passion means enough gas means enough passion. If I don't have enough passion for whatever I'm doing, I will run out of gas. I will stop somewhere in the middle. I will not be able to continue. And it happens all the time. People, their passion shift. People figure out, maybe sometimes I have burnout. I'm suffering, from whatever symptoms that always linking you back to, not having enough passion for whatever you're doing. Your GPS is your values. So if you work in a career or a job or a space that doesn't satisfy your core values, if your personal values are not in line with your corporate, the corporation's values that you work in, if you're not aware of your values, or you don't drill down inside yourself and know what really is important to you, you'll get lost, all the time in the middle. The last is the final destination. So if you don't have a final destination, where are you heading? There's no benefit of, why I'm doing this. So the idea of imagining an ideal lifestyle, and it depends on each one of us. I ask questions like, what's your ideal working day? How you want to have your breakfast, for example? Where do you want to spend, your working hours? How you want to commute to work, with whom you want to spend the weekend. Like, all these details help people to imagine and visualize their ideal lifestyle. If you're able to know your top passions, let's say 3 to 5 top passions, core values, 3 to 5 core values, and then have an idea, where are you heading 5 years from now, for example, and then bring those 3 circles together, then this is somehow makes it a bit easier for you to decide, okay, this is where I want to be, somewhere in the middle between those 3 circles, I would say.
What's interesting, I want to pull up a quote. I just read a quote this morning about passions, and it kind of, and it says, it's by James Clear. It says, passion is a feeling that follows action. It tends to be created or discovered, not predicted or planned. You don't find your passion. It finds you as you get in the mix and try things. And I'm curious to know from you, like, have you had people that had that final destination in mind, but then somewhere along the way, they realized that that's not what they want as they start taking those actions? Like, what I'm saying? Like, I'm just curious, because sometimes when I work with individuals, it's like, we think we
Yeah.
know what we want, but we don't necessarily realize what that road is going to be like. So once they start doing things, they're like, wait a minute, maybe that's not what I want. And then they kind of reroute, right? So talk to me a little bit about that.
Exactly. But I mean, I think there are a lot of misleading information about our passions in the space. And there are a few things I spent years on understanding my passions and passions in general. And I would argue there are a few rules for passion in general. Number one is your passion choose you. You don't choose your passion. Like you don't get born with a few passions and this is my destiny. Sometimes it happens, but that is connecting us to the second rule, which is your passion is kind of a seed that's implanted in your heart, maybe to figure out your life purpose. So there might be a purpose beyond figuring out that passion or understanding that passion. The third rule is that not every passion would be a passion, because you need to explore that passion. You need to spend a bit of time on understanding that passion before jumping into the ocean and decide that I'm building the next business or next career on that passion. Also, you need to understand that not every passion is monetizable. So you need to understand how to monetize that passion. Last but not least, our passion shift and change all the time, because we as personalities, we change, our interests change, our personality change all the time. Me and you, Elena, 10 years ago, I'm sure we were completely different persons from now. And 10 years from now, we will be completely different persons, because we keep evolve with our experiences, with a shift of knowledge, with building experiences. So passion itself is not enough. You need a kind of blueprint around it. And you need a testing period where you test a few passions around and see which one will lead to what. Sometimes there is a dead end from passion. You don't need to waste your time with it. You can spend, some time as a hobby or so on it. And some others, when you give more passion, it helps you to turn your weaknesses into strength. And then you can build the next career on business on.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And what kind of comes to mind is, I've interacted with certain individuals who are not in positions to be able to devote time to their passion in the sense of like a full-time thing, right? And so, and you're right, passion a lot of times does not make money for many people, or not the kind of money that one would need to sustain a family. But what I've seen kind of work for people is, understanding what you enjoy, what brings you joy. So you might have that job that, you might not be able to make that job into something you super enjoy, but you're really good at it and you need that paycheck and you got a family to support. But what I've seen work is that if you just have that passion as a side project, even the separation between work and doing things that you might not necessarily enjoy and having that joy to spend outside of working hours feeds, it kind of completes all of that. So it gives that balance a little bit, because, you and I, we both spend time in the Middle East, and that there are many people, not just in the Middle East, but even in America where I'm at, that are simply, no matter how much they love doing something, it's just not going to be an option to do it full time or to make the kind of salary that they need or the kind of income, and I think that's important for people to realize as well, because there's a lot of talk about, entrepreneurship and passion and all that. And I feel like, and it's like, if you don't have that, like, then you're just like on this forever, and I think you should continue to look for it. But I think that it's also like, we have to be, realistic that there are many people that just don't have that access or, ability to do that,
Exactly. And then also adding to your point, sometimes spending an hour or a couple of hours on a passion that you don't see any value related to your career or work might help you to refresh every single day. I would just argue sometimes I'm enjoying conversations around theology and cultural, different cultural contexts and all of those stuff. So I keep reading it almost every day. I keep watching videos every day. I keep learning about them every day. It doesn't necessarily help me in whatever I'm doing right now or help me in the past, but it's refreshing my mind, my soul in many different ways. And it's helping me also to come back to whatever I'm doing very energetic. So
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I think it's just finding those moments of joy. I don't know where I've heard this, but somebody said, it's just those moments of joy. Like you don't need to have this huge thing. It's just that moment of joy. And I see that there's more opportunity now to do what you enjoy, but I still
Yes.
see it as a very privileged space for many people. But everybody can do something they enjoy every day. It's just for how long and if you're making money or not. But so and I don't want anybody listening to this like, oh, I don't know what passion is and like what do I do with it, and like because sometimes you don't know what your passion is like until later in life, like 40s, 50s, 60s sometimes, right? So it's but it's all possible and doable for sure. I'm curious, and all the different changes that you've gone through. It's very impressive, by the way. Like it's such a dynamic, it's such a dynamic career. You truly just never settled and just continue to pursue your interests and joys, and to be able to monetize on it. But when I'm sure there were struggles and challenges. What were the hardest things, I guess, about changing that? Because you've also done this internationally, which is also impressive. But what have been the biggest struggles, and how did you overcome at least the days that it wasn't so great and easy?
I would say two big groups of challenges. The first one is when you start changing, you would realize that most of the people around you were questioning what you're doing. Family circle, friend circle, colleague circle, and I still remember in my first, career transition, I was a pharmacist. Everybody expect me to be a pharmacist all my life, and I'm just saying, I want to be a diplomat. So the daily conversation with people around me, they were saying exactly these kind of words: "You are stupid. You're wasting your time. You're silly. You will never be able to do it." That was very hard for me. So, and I was questioning myself all the time. I grew up with my own also insecurities. I was a very shy, introverted kid. So I was also questioning all of these things in my personality. How to deal with that? I think I had to build faith in myself. I had to believe in the fairness of the universe, of God. If you do your best, you will get something, even if you're not destined to get what you really want, but do your best. So I was having almost on a daily conversation, I was repeating what people were saying to me. Literally, they were saying to me, this is a big competition, a national competition. It happens maybe once every 2 years. 2,000 people or more are, competing. At the end of the day, they're going to take 20 or 30. Do you think you are a pharmacist? They take you, one of those 20, and they leave all those guys who are much more capable than you? It made sense. And I was questioning myself. Every day I was repeating this to myself. And I say, do you think they're going to take you pharmacists and, leave all these guys? And I was just asking the question in another way. I would say, is it impossible to God? And I would just reply in the same moment. I would say, no, it's not. Then I say, then focus on your part. Just focus on your part. And your part now is just keep studying, keep preparing yourself for this. So all the surroundings were, discouraging you from getting what you want, but staying on course all the time, making sure you get the feedback, you filter the feedback, and keep doing what you're doing, I think was super helpful. The second set of challenges is when you get to that new industry, is super challenging because you are a generalist at that moment. I was a pharmacist, so I was a specialist in that. But then I'm moving to diplomacy, and I am meeting people who are more specialized than I am. Or I move to banking, and I work in investment department. I'm the only non-investment specialist or expert or non-banker, and I had to cope with those challenges. Again, everybody's questioning you again, what kind of value you can bring, to that new space. So I had to learn very fast. I had to run in a very fast pace just to cope with with how people are coping with their work. I had to show what kind of strength I had in my previous capacity and experiences, and show people another angle, where I can add value, where with their specialization they cannot do so. So both set of challenges were really hard, but then there is always a way. Always there is a way to manage those challenges.
I really love the part about reframing your own conversations, because I think that is the hardest. I think asking a different kind of questions is absolutely powerful, because sometimes that little chatter in the back of your head, it's usually our worst enemy. And it's very easy to just be like, okay, well, maybe it's not going to happen, right? But it's like, what's the worst that will happen if you just try? Like, okay, you won't, but at least you'll know you tried, right? So in your case, obviously you've succeeded. And I think more often than not, if we actually, another important point you mentioned is that if we actually put in the work, you said, like, do your part, right? Like, trust the universe, God, whatever one believes in. But it's like, you have to do your part. You have to work for it as well.
Exactly. And connected to that point, the more work you do in yourself, preparing yourself, the more the universe will give you messages to let you know that you are on course, you are on the right track. And when you start receiving those messages, they come in many different ways, no matter what you believe in, they come to you. If you want to get to your, if I would say, personal legend, as in The Alchemist, or get to your dream thing or life purpose, you will get those messages. And I received hundreds of those messages in many different ways that were telling me I'm on the right path. I'm doing this right. I just have to keep doing this. And of course, being consistent all the time, that every single day you have to do something to get you closer to your dream is really a key.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in addition to kind of preparing and taking, the maybe sometimes examination or studying or getting an MBA, right, to kind of make these shifts, what is the next biggest push that you had? Like, what was the most helpful thing that you benefited from when you were making that career change? Because I think a lot of people, when they try to make the change, they're like, well, what helps? What do I need to focus on? So what has been really helpful to you in your journeys?
I think number one in the next phase is expanding your network, because you come from a different network, wherever you were, and you're moving to a new industry, a new domain. So unless you build that network early in the process, unless you start, seeing a lot of seeds around and linking with people, learning from different people, asking specialist in that new career, for example, what are the 3 pros and cons of working in that space or in that organization or so. Expanding my network was always important, because it always helped me somewhere in the middle. Also working with my clients, I always ask them to make this very strategically, in a way that is not just connecting to random people. It's building a map, a stakeholder map that you know where are you heading, have the map in front of you, look at different partners and see those partners where they can connect you to, and continue evolving and building that map and expanding it.
Yeah, I like that you said strategic. There is, I forget which book it was. I read a book and it said, I think I want to say it was the Never Eat Alone maybe or something, but they said there's 3 types of networks: personal, professional, and strategic. And personal, of course, is like the friends and family. Professional is your colleagues, and strategic is like, who do you need to know for that next step? And I love that, because it's that's what a lot of people miss out on. It's like they focus so much on today that when they're so comfortable, right? And that when they usually don't start networking until they need it, and that's the wrong time to start networking or building new relationships. It's like ongoing, right?
Exactly. And also, it's almost not only about taking, it's about giving first. It's about being an interesting person and useful persons to other. It doesn't necessarily mean that the person that you help will have to help you, but also it's about karma, because the universe is receiving all of this, and it will pay you back in many different ways. And I have seen this in my life. I remember I was at some point in my diplomacy career, and just an example, a student in engineering wanted to join diplomacy, and the guy randomly contacted me. And I just started helping him, like giving him advice how to, join diplomacy, how to prepare for the exam. 3 years, it took him 3 years to be as a diplomat as me. And I remember on the day that he contacted me to thank me that, okay, thank you so much. After 3 years of helping me and supporting me, I am a diplomat like you. That day was one of the hardest days in my life. And I was facing a very big challenge in my life, in my diplomacy career. And I took this as a message, like, don't worry, things will be much better than now. You got this message to, let you know that things will get back on course and back on track. And that's what happened. A couple of months later, I got what I really wanted and I dreamed for, and I went to the post that I really dream of. So just keep helping people and keep, being an interesting person. Definitely you will get back a lot.
I love it that you said that. I actually just recorded a podcast for my other podcast that I have, which is just Confessions of a Career Coach. And I talked about the lost art of professional courtesy. And it's really just being, again, it's about giving. And I think that's the biggest, if anybody is listening to this and they're like, what is one thing I can do? Is just help others. Like, we're all connected. I don't know in what world does one live in if they think that by hogging information or not sharing information with other people and not trying to help each other out, like, how do you think it doesn't come back to you somehow? Like, and it drives me crazy. And I feel so strongly about this because it is so connected. And it's like, it's about giving, like genuinely just helping each other out, because you never know where you're going to be tomorrow or whose help you're going to need one day. Like, and it just drives me crazy. This, literally I just vented on my podcast about the professional courtesy, just the basics of being human to human that we forget. And it's like, if you're not helping other people and trying to be, you know what I mean? Especially in a professional setting, like, why are you on LinkedIn? Why are you in this network, for example? If you're not willing to make introductions in a way where it makes sense, obviously, if you're not willing to help somebody out, like it's a huge pet peeve of mine. I don't understand it. And it's karma, it's universe, whatever you want to call it, but it's there's something to it. I agree. I
agree. I feel pity for a lot of people who just keep everything to themselves, always like to take and run, because it doesn't work like this. When you really need the help and the support, maybe you will not be able to get it. But if you start giving, when the time comes to you, you will definitely find somebody giving you a helping hand. So I totally agree with you.
No, that's super interesting. So what is, out of everything that you've done so far, what would you say is your biggest achievement or thing you're most proud of?
Wow, this is a really very, very good question. And I would say many. I would because it depends where you were, and I would say being a diplomat was a very big achievement for me, because again, with all my insecurities, I didn't have that kind of support that I needed at that point, and I just believe in myself. It was a very long process, almost except my parents for some time, and then of course, because it was a long process. I failed at some point, so everybody started questioning, except one of my, or actually my best friend. He passed away 10 years ago. He was somehow the only supportive person around me. So that moment when I received that official letter to tell me that I got appointed as a diplomat was a very big day for me, because I proved to myself that I could be of benefit, that I could pass, through all those challenges. I could go through those adversity by myself. I could prove a lot of people wrong, not to prove them wrong, but just to prove that I could be doing something interesting. Something I'm still very proud of is I was able to bring investments worth of $1.1 billion to my country and to the region. Is something I'm very, very proud of. It requires years of effort, big teams, And being in charge of business development, it wasn't easy. You work in a startup multinational development bank, which needs years to invest in different space. But it's something I'm really proud of. I will always be proud of until the last day, that I was able to bring investment and infrastructure in countries and developing nations. So yeah, this is somehow something. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So where do you hang out at? Where can people get in touch with you, learn more about, get your books, learn more about how you work with others?
Sure. So the passionmba.com is my main website. There is a very interesting ebook there. It's about the 10 top mistakes to avoid when planning your career transition. So it's for free, downloadable there. Also mustafaammar.com, M-U-S-T-A-F-A, Ammar, A-M-M-A-R.com. And you can find my book through both websites as well.
Sounds good. And I'll make sure to share that in the show notes. And the last question I have for all my guests is, what is one question you wish people would ask themselves more often?
Oh, that's a good question. I think once you achieve something in your life, in your career, celebrate that achievement, because it's very important to celebrate your wins and your achievements. The next thing you need to do is ask yourself, what's next? You have to ask yourself what's next, because if you just stay around your achievements and not doing much more, stay in your comfort zone, you are the one who will lose. So the right question right after reaching something, a milestone in your career, celebrate that and ask yourself what's next. It's very important. If you keep asking what's next, you will get to what's next. I'm sure for that.
I love that question. I love that question. It's almost like it's continuing to push you forward and to kind of continue to evolve yourself as an individual, because also there's a lot of talk now, right? It's like everybody's trying to kill this, like, not everybody, but there are a lot of people try to kill this like hustle culture, but I'm like, that's what,
Exactly.
like, there's a healthy way to go, but yeah, there's people that get burnt out, but there's also like, you gotta want to keep moving. Like, you never reach your, if you were just like, if you just reach that one thing, then you're probably not even dreaming big enough, and it's, and I agree. And we have to continue to kind of grow and evolve, and ask yourself what's next is to continue that. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. It's a great question. What's next?
Exactly, because it's a journey. And when you look at your journey back 20, 30 years ago, if you keep asking that question, you will see all those. It's not only about successes and achievement, but it's also about you prove to yourself that you can do more. There are a lot of potential that you never discovered about yourself in the past, and you keep discovering. And I thought this about myself. I thought that I would never do things. I would never learn skills. Just give an example. I thought at some point, 7 years before I started learning Chinese in China, and I didn't have any experience with Chinese. And I thought, okay, maybe I would try to learn Chinese online. And I just tried for a couple of hours, and I say, no, it's impossible. I would never learn this. 7 years later, I got the chance to go to China and study full time for a year. And I learned Chinese. And it was a big moment for me, because never say never, never say impossible. Just keep doing it, keep learning.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%.
I love that. I love that. Well, Mustafa, it's really been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing out there. It's so important. It's more and more people, of course, are looking for that kind of change, and I love to see it. And it's great to have some guidance around it. So really kudos to you, and really super impressed with all these changes you made in your career successful. Like, it's amazing. So thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Elena, for having me on your show. And I wish you all the best, and more people like yourself as well will help the world to be better. Thank you.